Well, this week's developer Q&A is coming to you a little bit late. I usually get the dev Q&A sent to me on Friday, I record it on Friday, release it on Friday, and then the devs actually post it on Saturday afternoon. This gives me a little bit of a head time. Now, this Friday I did message through saying, are we getting dev Q&A? I DM'd repeatedly, I got no response. And on Saturday afternoon, it's been a rough weekend. I didn't get the dev Q&A until literally this morning, because on Saturday afternoon, after 7 wonderful years of living in Zimbabwe, I had to get on a flight back to the UK. I'm not happy about this. There's been a few issues with Carrie and mine's relationship that requires me to give her some space and to move back to the UK for the foreseeable future whilst we sort out what's going on there. I'm not going to go into details on that, but it is a difficult time for me. Those were very unpleasant flights. I'm at the tail end of a journey that I never wanted to have to make, but we remain hopeful, which is a key point. Now, this meant that I actually didn't really bother to even look at the dev Q&A by time I'd landed in the UK. I wasn't even sure I was going to do a video, but I got a few people DM and message me saying, hey, there's some interesting stuff in this one, would like to know your thoughts and opinions. So I thought, screw it, better late than never. I've grabbed my microphone. I still need to get an actual proper setup here in the UK, like a desk and that. I'm just crouching on the end of the bed with the microphone set up. Yeah, that's great fun. But we'll sort that all out. I do also apologise for my throat. Flights just do not agree with me. It's been a very emotional weekend in general as well. I'm feeling like utter crap. I do have a bottle of Lucozade next to me, something I've missed in Zimbabwe. We don't readily have it available, but we'll try and hold out. Anyway, welcome back to another weekly developer Q&A for Eve Echoes. Each week the devs take a series of questions posed by you, the community. They respond to those questions. They post all of the responses and the questions themselves to the official Eve Echoes Discord, Twitter, Facebook, and somewhere in-game as well. And I like to go through these to give my own thoughts and opinions on everything that could be going on with that, what it means, how it's going, all that kind of thing. Anyway, so let's jump straight in. First question, I have just had a look at this one. I really don't understand this. Like, I don't get what the point of this is. I don't even know what to say. But we can create up to 3 chat channels for our specific goals. What prevents you from implementing the function of deleting the channels we created, but that we don't need anymore? I would ask, why do you care? Why do you need to? If you're not using them anymore, you can just kick everyone out of them and then leave it yourself. You don't need to be able to delete it. Like, why is this an important thing for you? Paulin, oh boy, responds, thank you for your question. At the moment, we don't have a way to delete chat channels, which is interesting considering these guys are developers. However, the creator of the channel can change the channel name and the members to repurpose it. There we are. So if you don't want to have a channel anymore, you can just kind of close it down, but it's still theoretically there if you ever want it back. It's kind of like deleting it, but it just going to the recycling bin and you can just grab it out again later. I really don't get why someone cares so much about this to ask a question, and equally I also don't get why the devs can't just have a way to delete a channel. I guess there's a safety thing there, that if someone gets a load of people into a channel that's useful and then just decides to quit and maliciously delete it, it could cause problems, but they can kind of do that anyway. It's just slightly more effort than clicking a delete button. Like, what is there to say on this question? That's such a crap question. I'm hoping the rest are a bit better. I haven't honestly read through these, but that one's awful. Question number 2. In terms of electronic warfare, there should be, would it be possible to create for freighters only, oh god, a skill set for modules that can block the effects of stasis webifiers, warp jammers, and interdiction bubbles? Oh, yeah. Please, make my ship immune, is what you're asking here. Welcome to Eve. Seriously, welcome to Eve. If you don't want your ship destroyed, stick to freaking HiSec and just, yeah, get bent with this kind of thing. This invulnerability module could be activated for 10 seconds and have a reactivation time of 90 seconds. Yeah, like, that matters. Like, that really matters. You're sitting there going, oh, but it would have a 90 seconds cooldown. Give it an hour cooldown, you'd probably still be fine. You just have to log off between each jump. 90 seconds is nothing. Like, you're moving a freighter. Freighters are among the most slowest and vulnerable ships in Eve Echoes and possess no module slots for protection. Yes, that's design, don't you think? Like, not everything... Oh, God. Ship destruction is a key part of industry, and lack of ship destruction is kind of one of the things that screws industry. We can talk about, like, the insurance as much as we like, but the key problem with insurance is that it stops ships being destroyed. It stops industrialists having to build replacement ships. That's the key problem with insurance. So reducing the amount of destruction, same thing, right? And seriously, like, the lack of modules and that on a freighter is there because you are supposed to fly it in a fleet. If you're in nullsec, you're supposed to be working as a team for these things. Let's see what Paul Lynn says. Freighters are heavy but high defense transport capital ships in design that lack protection measures and therefore need protection from other combat ships. Oh god, Paul Lynn actually understands it. Having enhancement modules is a good idea, but modules blocking stasis webifiers, warp jammers, and interdiction bubbles may be too powerful. You think? Something that blocks warp jammers already exists. They are called warp core stabilizers and warp core optimizers. And interdiction bubbles, well, again, there is actually a thing in EVE Online, which I keep saying should be added to EVE Echoes, called an interdiction nullifier. It's a module you can activate, and it allows you to warp out of an interdiction sphere. The thing with this in EVE Online is you can't fit it to a freighter. You can fit it to the blockade runners, and you can fit it to a deep space transport, but those things are also still slow enough that if you were to try and do that, you're probably going to get... there is the possibility that you will get scrammed as well. It's not a straight up just invulnerability, and that's it. Off you go. You can kind of use a burst jammer to cause people to delock you and thus lose their scrams, but then you're stuck in the bubble, or you can use an interdiction nullifier to ignore the bubble, but you'll be stuck if anyone scrams you. And you can't have both of those modules fitted at the same time, so there is a choice inherent in there. Ultimately, the idea of being able to block stasis webifiers tell me you know nothing about mechanics in the game, because if someone hits you with a stasis webifier while you're in a freighter, you're actually going to warp faster. Theoretically, you want people to be hitting you with stasis webifiers, because the whole point of how you warp is that you have to be aligned, your angle of velocity has to be pointing within 5 degrees of the target, and you need to be moving at 75% of your maximum velocity. If you are webbed, your maximum velocity is drastically reduced, but your acceleration, mass, and inertia are all the same, so you reach that maximum velocity faster. So if someone hits you with a 60% webifier, you warp literally 40% faster than you would before. Ultimately, it's something you can actually do if you're moving a freighter in a fleet. You bring a load of little interceptors with you, and when the freighter starts to align, you lock it, you web it, and off it goes. We've seen this in EVE Online, where big mining operations will often be webbing each other, so that when someone jumps in, everyone just hits warp. And they're all webbing each other, so they all align and achieve warp significantly faster and warp away. So yeah, the idea that you want to be invulnerable to stasis webifiers is kind of dumb. It means you don't understand the game. And the whole asking for warp jammer interdiction bubbles, again, means you kind of don't understand the game here. Yes, interdiction nullifiers should be a thing in EVE Echoes. They should be a module that is limited to the number of ships it can be put on, notably things like deep space transports, blockade runners, and interceptors. It makes the interceptors an active thing rather than just offline autopilot through all of the bubbles. You can still go from A to B completely safe. You just activate the interdiction nullifier if you're in a bubble. But you just can't do it completely offline while in nullsec anymore, which to me would be a brilliant change, because that helps with the AFK hauling and means people actually have to play the game rather than just hit autopilot and then go off and do something else for the next hour. I don't know. Anyway, he says, we understand your concern, so we will release other modules in the future to enhance capital ships, including freighters. Cool, because capital ships definitely needed enhancing, right? It's not like they're already the most broken, overpowered bullshit ships in the game, but hey, we're going to make them better. For now, we recommend that pilots not fly freighters alone and always travel under the protection of their teammates. Would you look at that, recommending that pilots actually learn how the game works? Isn't that something new for a dev Q&A? I'm not exactly thrilled at the idea of releasing other modules to enhance capital ships. I'm, at best, grapplers, maybe, stasis grapplers, but definitely not stuff like this. Like, seriously, you have to be an idiot to get a freighter caught, like, with your trousers down. Just take a fleet of friends with you. It's not difficult. Question number 3. With the development of the Corp tech tree, it will be increasingly difficult for two corporations with developed tech trees to merge into one. Oh no. Like changing corporation names, is it possible to implement a reset button with a Plex fee to return a percentage of the amount invested? Okay. Thank you for your suggestion, says Paul, and we'll discuss the feasibility of implementing return. We need to make sure this feature is not misused. Yeah, because a respec is horrific, right? How dare people use a paid respec? You did it with Lazarus units. Why not do it with the Corp tech tree? There's very little to say on this one. I kind of look at this like, oh no, you can't merge two corporations. You close one corporation down anyway. What you're trying to say is, if we try to merge two corporations and one of them doesn't have as good abilities as the other, can we reset them to, like, respec? And it's kind of like, well, I get it. I kind of get it. But equally, I don't see it as a huge issue. But again, would be a nice quality of life change. And it can't be that hard. And you know what? It makes NetEase more money. So as soon as they figure that shit out, they'll probably do it. Because, oh, look, you can swipe your card to reset your tech tree and off you go kind of thing. I foresee that happening. I do see that happening. As for how it's misused, come on. Hello, are there any plans in the future for faction dreadnoughts or dreadnought-specific modules like the combat modules for the existing carriers and super capitals? What? Dreadnought-specific mod? You don't need Dreadnought-specific modules are technically the capital weapons, because the fighters, the carriers don't really use those, but okay. Okay, and dreadnoughts also have their own specific mode, which, you know, they don't have. You don't need specific modules for this. And again, we don't need more freaking dreadnoughts. There is enough capital ships. There are enough capital ships in the game. There is enough capital content in the game. Please, can we take a look at something smaller? Thank you for your question. At the moment, we don't have any plans to develop faction dreadnoughts in the short term, although you can bet your bottom dollar that they are going to be working on things like the Komodo at some point in the future, and all the different things like the Chemosh and the different faction dreads. They will be coming. They will be coming, because NetEase cannot miss out on the opportunity to rinse your wallet even more for that kind of stuff. Our focus is currently on introducing non-capital ships. Your focus, you introduced 8 non-capital ships, of which 4 were cruisers, 4 were battleships. The battleships were the least inspired thing ever. You just literally took the standard battleships that everyone was using and made them better. The cruisers were cool, but were lacking in content. It's not just adding ships. It would be nice to get some ships. I'd love a Hurricane fleet issue. I would love to have, like, the Rift or Assault and stuff like this. We've gone over this numerous times on this channel. But without the content to support them, there's no point adding new ships. You're just adding more shit that people aren't going to fly. So you need to be introducing more small ship content. And again, I'm going to have to spend a brief moment talking about this, because every time I say I want small ship content, we want small ship content, I get DMs from people going, oh, there is small ship content in the game, it's called PvP. Oh, you can do, like, you know, tier 8 smalls and things like that in small ships. What we want is something that that is PvE, that cannot be done in a bigger ship. It doesn't have to be more lucrative. Of course it doesn't. You're flying a cheaper ship. I don't think anyone is seriously asking for frigates to be able to make as much ISK as battleships. What we're asking for is some form of meaningful, fun content that we can do, that you don't just sit there and go, why am I not using a battleship for this? It would just be so much faster and easier if I were using a battleship. Why am I not using a battleship? I want something where there is a reason for me to undock a frigate, a destroyer, or a cruiser. There is an actual reason for it, other than, oh, but the frigate is cheaper, therefore it kind of makes its cost back faster. Or if someone jumps you, no one jumps you. This is EVE Echoes. PvP like that isn't really a thing. Yes, there are some examples, and people are going to link them in the description down below. Oh, but, you know, what about, like, Blink Fleet and stuff like this? Yes, of course. There are some examples of this, but we need actual content for small ships, because right now, if you want to PvP in small ships, you need to buy those ships somehow, and the only reliable way to really make ISK is to jump in a battleship, because if you're doing it in a frigate or destroyer, you just feel, why am I not using something bigger? Anyway, our focus is currently on introducing non-capital ships, whereas it should be on introducing non-capital ship content. However, as we continue to release more new ships, we'll definitely come back to a capital ship version in the future. Again, they're not going to be able to resist selling you a Chemosh or a Komodo at some point in the future. It's going to happen. Hopefully there's a decent whack of time between now and then, and that involves actually getting some content for everyone else who doesn't want to fly freaking capitals. We'll see. I'm still not holding my breath. Final question then. Hello, my question for the devs is regarding personally owned stations. The refueling can be problematic because there's no clear way to separate fuels intended to be used, and fuels you don't want to use. If you place plasmoids in the hangar and the fuel bay, then press the station's refuel button, both will be used. Yeah, because it needs to fully refuel. If you it will take from the fuel hold first, and then from the hangar if there is still stuff left. You have told the station to refuel, and then you have not given it enough fuel in the fuel bay, so it goes to the hangar to get the rest. That's a quality of life change that you're just ultimately not being smart about. You're wondering, why is it taking stuff that is not in the fuel bay? because it doesn't want to leave the station half fueled because you were too dumb to realise that you hadn't put it in the hangar. Then press the station to refuel. Additionally, docked ships currently being piloted will also consume any fuel in the cargo hold. While obviously not the biggest problem currently, agreed, could we expect this process to be made more user-friendly in the future? It is. You tap on the fuel and use the refuel button there. Like, don't tap on the ship, just tap on the fuel and hit refuel, and it will inject just that fuel. It's there already. Like, I don't mean to be rude about this. You may be a nice person on this, but again, this is a dev Q&A question that is taking up time that could be something useful. It's there. It's in the game. If you want to use specific fuel only from your fuel bay, then open up your fuel bay, tap the fuel, and then tap refuel. And it will use just that fuel, only that fuel. You can have 5 different stacks of plasmoids, and if in the fuel bay at the same time, and if you tap and refuel on one of them, it won't touch the other 4, even though they're the same fuel and your ship is no longer fully fueled. This exists. When you tap on the ship and hit refuel, the game is trying to help you out by getting every drop of fuel into that ship that it can. If you want to use specific fuels in specific amounts, you just have to do that manually. It's already there. Let's see what Paulin says. Thank you for bringing this issue to our attention. We'll definitely look into it and see if we can find ways to solve it. It's there. Currently, we suggest pilots to choose the most cost-effective fuel from their inventory and refuel manually. So it's there. Paulin, you even admit that it's there. Why do you need a way to solve a problem that doesn't exist? Like, literally, if this person is saying, I want to be able to choose exactly which fuel is going to be used, rather than the game just consuming all of it from all over the place, it's there. You just tap on the actual fuel itself, rather than the ship. That's not difficult. To be fair, that's how I've been refueling my ships mostly for ages. The only time I don't refuel that way is essentially if I know that all I've got in my station is plasmoids anyway, because, you know, PI harvests them for me. It's such a non-issue. It's such a non-issue, and that makes this a really weird dev Q&A. Like, okay, the electric warfare question, I can see why people wanted that answered, and the faction dreadnoughts, and the fact that they're mentioning that they are going back and adding more smaller ships. I'm not going to say small ships, because apparently battleships are small ships to the devs now. Ultimately, what a dev Q&A. Like, I almost feel, what is the point in this one? Most of the questions here are just meh. Like chat channels, refueling, corp tech tree. Yeah, the corp tech tree is about the best of those 3. That should have the ability to do a respec, especially since you could easily set that up as a monetization thing, which netties love to pieces. So yeah, you've got that. The other 2, the dreadnoughts and the electronic warfare, yeah, adding invulnerability, always a great idea. Let's make everything invulnerable, shall we? Wouldn't that be awesome? You're a freighter. You are supposed to be vulnerable. People are supposed to be able to jump you. You need to find a way around that. And people sit there and go, oh, but Benzie, you're just promoting your PvP playstyle. Heck, even go and watch my EVE Online content. I'm not really a PvPer. Show me PvP videos on my channel. Ultimately, I am a gazelle. I enjoy being hunted. Being hunted is what makes this game fun for me. I'm not a big fan of hunting. I'm a fan of being hunted. It makes the game far more interesting. Like, if I can mine in nullsec or mine in highsec, I'm going to go for the nullsec one, just because it's riskier, which makes it more engaging and more enjoyable. People who are risk-averse should not be playing EVE in general. In Echoes, you can play in highsec, but you shouldn't really be playing EVE if you are risk-averse. It's kind of the point of how this universe works. It's why EVE is theorized to stand for everyone versus everyone. Or everyone versus everything, depending. But no official word on that. Anyway, there we are. Dev Q&A for the week of the 7th, July the 4th to July the 10th. Bit of a non-one, really. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Again, if you are going to FanFest this year up in Iceland, please let me know. And if you're not, let me know what you'd like me to showcase while I'm up there. If you've got questions you'd like me to ask the devs and so on. Heck, you know, it could be some interesting stuff. I'll see if I can set up an interview with someone or something. That would be really quite cool. Anyway, my throat is about to die, so I am going to sign this one off now. Happy sailing, folks, and see you in New Eden.